Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is QE Babble. I'm so excited to be hosting today's session. It's on plugging AI concepts into the work of a quality engineer. There's no doubt that we're at a turning point in technology where AI isn't just a buzzword anymore. It's changing the way we build, test, and deliver software. And that absolutely includes you, quality engineers. And in my work as a QE recruiter, I speak to at least 50 quality engineers a week, people like you. And many of those are still figuring out how AI can help to drive efficiencies in their work. And that's absolutely why we're here today. There might not be any definitive answers from the end of this session, but we want to share insights. That's what QE Babble is all about. And we've got three brilliant panelists who are joining us today. We've got Rahul Parwal, Bill Matthews, and Naveen Bhatti, who each bring a unique perspective on how AI is reshaping our roles and our workflows and the future. And we've got some really good content to look at. I'll bring everyone in to the session, and then I'll tell you what we're going to cover. Hello, panel.
Hi.
Hello. Thanks for joining. So today we're going to look at practical tips on how we can integrate AI into your daily workflow as a QE, and then how to potentially scale those AI practices and methods across a bigger unit, across a QE team or across a technology team. And then we're going to look at the bigger picture. So we're going to look at how AI is reshaping the work of a quality engineer and what that means for future career opportunities, a real crystal ball question. So hopefully that we're going to share loads of really interesting insights. Do make sure that you add in some comments to the chat, and we'll try and get those in towards the end of the session and answer those questions, but also your opinions as well, because we really want to see those. So without further ado, let's go to Bill. So Bill, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
No, pleasure. Feel free to introduce yourself, and then if you want to just roll into some practical tips that you might have on integrating AI into your work.
Yeah, sure. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Bill. I split my time between consultancy in testing and quality, particularly these days around AI, and the other half of my time is as a technical lead on a startup, doing all sorts of interesting things with AI and agents and things like that. But I've got about 30 years experience in the industry, so I've seen a lot of these kind of peaks and troughs of demands and technologies coming in. So where do I use AI in my quality work? Well, a lot of the stuff I do is around automation and about automating tests and processes for companies. So I use a lot of code generation, and I find that certainly certain tools are much better at doing that than I am for probably about 80% of the work. When I say better, I mean faster, and it's easier for me to just kind of say, this is what I'm looking for, and it goes away and generates. And like I say, it'll get me there about 80% of the way there on most of the test automation and automation type tasks that I do. Slightly less than that on my actual development work where I'm building applications, because I think the code's much more complicated for those compared to the kind of code we build for automation. The other area that I use it for is synthetic data generation. We're not necessarily talking about using for code generation for generating individual data points. I'm talking about building mass data sets and augmenting existing data sets based on sort of similar distributions of data. So it's not quite the same as just generating me 50 user IDs or something like that, because I can do that quickly in code anyway. The other way I use it quite a lot, and interestingly, if you don't know, Richard Bradshaw, he wrote a blog post on this yesterday, is increasing my domain understanding in particular areas. So particularly as a consultant, I jump into different companies and different projects, and I need to understand things quite quickly, and often have very small amounts of time with with domain experts. And so I want to be prepared when I go there to ask the right kind of questions. So I found that using AI to help me through the process of understanding a new topic or new domain really works wonders for me. Previously, what I'd be doing there is quickly Googling things and searching things, reading lots of documents and trying to synthesize it. Whereas now the workflow is generally I start crafting questions and scoping the topic out with the AI, then start asking questions, and then start looking at the research around that, so other pages to deepen understand so that when I go in to see the SMEs, subject matter experts, that is, they're answering and making best use of their time because I'm asking questions that are helpful rather than me saying, what does this mean and what does that mean? I can ask real sort of business-driven questions. So they're the three main ways I use it. I use it in other ways as well, but I'm sure the other two have got other interesting perspectives. So I'll pass on to whoever's next.
Thank you. Cheers, Bill. Rahul, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Matt. So thank you for having me here, and thank you for everyone who's joined in, registered, signed up, and showed up on time. It shows that I think AI matters a lot, and you are exploring this topic. I have also been exploring this topic for the last couple of years, experimenting a lot into AI, publishing a lot of material and my experiments out there in public on AI through my blog or through my YouTube channel. And for the question around how do I see AI in the work of quality engineer, I think Bill clearly highlighted certain areas like for coding, data generation, script writing, certain ideas, and so on. But I want to like extend on top of that in general, I mean AI is designed to help you and answer you for anything that you ask. So AI is designed to be very helpful to you. And a lot of times when you like try to use AI for any use case, you'll probably get an answer. Now the important point to really think of is that what is the probability that AI can answer that question very reliably. So if that question is something which is based on like common public knowledge, AI can very well give you that because AI is trained on common public knowledge that is available out there on the web. That's the purpose of LLM. But if that thing is novel, if that thing designs engineering of the quality, if that thing needs understanding of context, fitting the context, then the probability of AI directly helping you is going to go down. So you have to find a balance between how much probability AI can help me accurately versus what is the impact of this task that I am thinking to do. And if it is a high impact task and something which is low probability, you are probably in an innovation zone. You have to maybe work on it yourself. You have to create something novel. But if it is something which is highly probable and it also doesn't have much impact on your day-to-day job, you could maybe go AI first there. I mean, you could like really leverage AI well. An example of that could be that if I generate boilerplate code, it's very highly probable that I get a good boilerplate code from AI, but the impact is not bad. I mean, if the boilerplate code even goes a little wrong, the impact is not bad. So, I mean, you have to like do this trade-off of what is the impact things have on your quality, what is the probability AI can help you with, and then apply different kind of task or subtask with AI. So maybe somewhere AI can help you more, somewhere you have to feed in and create the base, and then AI can just do reformatting of data or write it in a clear design. It can even help you improve on your base model. I mean, whatever you have created as an artifact. So it's kind of a balance. I mean, you have to know when to stop, when to start, and like probability and impact are two factors that I use to guide me.
That's interesting. I appreciate that. I think that's something that when I talk to people, they are, I guess, potentially a little bit unsure of is like when to push on this, when to use it and when not to. So you've got a bit of an equation there of what you use to decide when you use AI more or less. I think that's what you're saying. So that's useful. Thank you. Naveen, welcome. Thanks for joining us again, serial QE Babble panelist.
Thanks, Matt. I'm Naveen, head of engineering at TikTok. So we're building a SaaS product that helps improve the AI-powered workflow for pretty much every role within SDLC. So agentic SDLC, if you want to imagine. It's available for demo and stuff, so I'll drop a link later on. So Matt, it's an interesting question, and I think Bill and Rahul already covered a lot of things like start with the boring stuff and repetitive stuff. So if you're spending hours writing test cases, digging through logs, or triaging things, or writing automation script, AI is there. I think it can help immensely. What I want to focus on right now is something that we don't talk about enough. So testing AI products themselves. And to be honest, every product will have some form of AI baked in, either, very soon, basically. And that means for QA and QE, the roles needs to evolve and our technique needs to catch up. And one thing, and a couple of examples I'm going to share, how am I approaching testing AI products. So one thing that worked well for me is to borrow the core AI model training workflows and repurposing them for QA. Bill here is an expert around developing and deploying AI models. So I'm sure he can talk about it a lot more than I do. But things like SFT, DPO, RFT, like supervised fine-tuning and reinforced fine-tuning, these are some of the principles that are used to improve LLMs. And when applied right, I think they can massively improve how we evaluate the AI behavior. So as a QA, you need to know about certain ways and techniques to test AI products. I think that's where the role of QA is heading, and we'll cover more in the later part of this webinar. Another thing that is working well. So before I talk about that, so I've seen many, I think Rahul and Bill would agree, many AI pilots or projects, they fail or get scrapped because of the quality of the output they receive. And a lot of times it's only because of the quality of prompt or how people evaluate the prompt itself. So either it's a system prompt or the prompt you give when you're discussing or talking with AI. And the approach that worked quite well for us is golden data set testing approach. So where we created high quality curated examples, input output examples, and then used another LLM to kind of be as a judge kind of thing and test the accuracy or the quality of the output in that way. So to kind of sum up, if I had to kind of leave you with one tip on this topic, is to pick a QA task that you do every day and just and see which AI tool you can use to automate, accelerate, and I think look at existing LLM or AI related kind of techniques and workflows and how they can be repurposed for testing.
Okay, thank you. So it does lead us in really well to the next question, what you've just said there. So you mentioned, so pick a task that you're doing at the moment and try AI with it. Let's see what it can do for you, what the benefits are. Similar to what Rahul said, you've got to look at the probability and understand if it's going to be the right task to leverage AI with. But the next part, and this is, I've just seen a question come in, which I'll flash up because this is effectively exactly what the second question is. Here we are. So this is what Daniel's asked. The second question we asked was really about scaling this. So Naveen mentioned about a use case for someone. So pick it up, see if you can implement some AI and get some benefit from it. But this is potentially one of the big challenges. How do we go about introducing AI to a more traditional or potentially stubborn team of testers or developers? How do we scale this? So we're talking about some good concepts, but how do we do it on a excuse me, I've just dropped myself off there. Rahul, can I come to you on that one first?
Yeah, so I want to see, so as a tester or a member of a team, we are always a consultant. We are consulting people about solutions, ideas, and so on. And I want to talk about these 3 rules of consulting that will help Daniel. The first rule, no matter what they say, there is always a problem. So probably they are stubborn or they don't want to try it because they have had some past experiences or they have been bitten by some kind of a snake oil of AI. Second rule is, no matter what they say, it's always a people's problem. And the third rule, which is most important for us consultants, is that don't try to solve more than 10% at a time. So if you want to bring in AI or introduce an AI, start with 10%. Pick a micro task, pick a micro tool, show how this can help them get this micro improvement. Because if you try to change everything, sometimes people will get defensive, and there is no technical solution to a social problem. So you have to deal it in a social manner. You will have to like pick up micro opportunity where you can use a micro AI tool, show them what happened, show them the data, and I think they will get on board. So start small.
Like it. We could caption that. No technical solution to a social problem. So it's a people problem, is what you're saying.
Yeah, all problems are people problem inherently.
Yeah, and that's where stubbornness comes from, right? It's a people problem that he's highlighting there. Thank you, Bill. Your thoughts on how we can scale some of these brilliant things we've been talking about?
Yes, I mean, I've been consulting for a long time on different projects, and I'm quite well known for bringing in new and radical ideas. And the key thing is, I mean, like Rahul said, it's always a people problem. Technology changes, people don't care. But if people are stuck on how they currently do things, it's generally because they feel threatened by what we're doing. So a lot of it is about convincing people of the value of what we're doing, not just in terms of the value of what it gives you in terms of what you're replacing with automation, or in this case with AI, or automation through AI. It's about what else does that give the team back. So, many years ago, I once was famously replaced a whole team of I think it was a team of about 6 people in a finance organization who spent their whole days, every day, every month, just keying in new product data, and I automated that and basically made them redundant. But the interesting thing is, the way we solved that wasn't that we're going to make you all redundant. It was we're enabling you to move to a higher level task. You're no longer worrying about keying things in and watching somebody else key things in for assurance purposes. What you're doing is you're focusing now more on designing those products and testing those products to make sure they're fit for the customers. The keying in, you don't really care about, because that's not the high value piece of work. That's all we were replacing was the low value keying something in. So how you go about doing this is quite important, and so you have to show the benefit of what you're doing. But I think there's a sort of opposite part of that I'm seeing in the industry. It's not so much about individuals in the team wanting to use AI more and trying to convince the team. It's more the management saying, we're going to do AI testing, or we're testing with AI. How we test AI is a different story to how we use AI. And I think that's a harder problem, I think, for teams to adapt to, because there's these visions of, we can use AI and it's going to replace most of our testers. And so there is going to be some resistance to that work. But really, you have to think about it in terms of what am I going to be freed up from doing? Or what are people going to be freed up from doing that they currently find as a bit of a chore work, and to do more higher level work? So when I was talking about, using code generation tools to generate automation code, doesn't mean that I'm not doing any automation. I'm doing all the thinking and architecture and planning about it. I'm just basically getting a machine to do the typing. It can type faster than I'm a fast typist, but I'm not as fast as Cursor is at doing these things. So that frees me up to do more work. But I think managers coming in and saying we want them to start adopting it are really approaching it wrong. But I can understand where they're getting the pressure from in terms of their stakeholders saying, why aren't we using AI for this? Why aren't we using it for that? Because everyone feels like, there's the fear of missing out and the fear of falling behind because we're not using AI. And I think, in those kind of scenarios, management and organizations need to understand that, this is not just buying a subscription to Claude or ChatGPT. You have to do things like invest in what Anthropic call AI fluency, which is teaching people how to get the best out of these tools. Not just saying, here's the tool, go away and do it. It's about how learning better prompting techniques, better context engineering techniques, understanding the outputs that are coming out, dealing with things like hallucinations and understanding how they occur in the work that you're doing. There's also a governance piece that needs to be dealt with, I think, at that management level, which is, what's the acceptable use cases? Going back to what Rahul was saying, what are acceptable use cases for using AI in testing? What data should we be allowed to use in our interactions with these tools. And I think, you know, they kind of miss all of that, and they just say, right, here's a subscription to ChatGPT. We're done now. We're an AI-enabled organization. So I think, you know, it's just having that bigger thought.
Yeah, thanks. And I guess that's potentially similar to other new emerging technologies that make headlines in the industry, or in fact more globally than that. That people want to latch onto it without actually understanding some of the implications to it.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, they're not really prepared for what is actually required to get good output.
Yeah.
Out of these things, you know, like I say, AI fluency is one part of this, but that is very much at an individual level of someone sitting there at a chat window and interacting with an LLM. Yeah. Actually, the future for scaling this beyond small interactions with a person is all about flows and agentic flows, and that needs a lot more work and a lot more effort and a lot more engineering. And they want the kind of benefits you get out of something like Cursor in their testing, but they're not prepared to invest in building something that works in a similar way to Cursor. So Cursor, if people don't know, is more for code generation. It's quite a good tool.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Some really good points. Naveen, can I come to you on this one?
Yeah. I think it's a big one because adopting AI in QE or any other discipline is not just about plugging in a new tool and expecting the magic, like Bill said. And also, like Rahul touched upon, it's not just technical, it's a lot more people related, cultural and operational shift needed. So to kind of help me remember when I'm introducing AI across teams, I kind of repurposed the widely familiar SMART goal framework. So for AI, basically. So S, I repurposed as start small. So don't boil the ocean, like Rahul said. Maybe focus on 10% in the beginning. Pick a product feature or automate a process, or focus on a clear API. For example, reducing manual test design effort by 30% is an example. So start small. So M is make it accessible. So like Will said, just because you give subscriptions to ChatGPT or Claude is not enough. It's a good start. So and also use of low code or no code tools. So for example, Make.com is one, N8N is another one, Zapier and things like that, and use those AI tools so that not only the experts or engineers, but the other non-technical domain experts can also use and build upon it. That makes it, whatever experimentation you're doing, more accessible. A is for aligning with the values. Again, something that Bill touched upon. So, for example, forgetting about the test counts and measuring what matters, like more impactful metrics like release speed, NPS, or defect escapes and things like that. R is for, I think it was for around fluency. So raise your skills, if you may. So don't wait as a QA or an individual. We are all aware that it's here. AI is here. It's not a hype, not something that's going to phase out. So don't wait for like training plans. Embed AI into your workflows, and so that you can learn from it and then share with the team. And the last one is T is for trust through governance. Again, something Bill touched upon very slightly. So things like bias checks and guardrails and explainability and transparency and all those kind of things. So I use the SMART goal framework, but repurposed for introducing and scaling AI within a team or organization. And another thing I would do to scale is to start AI in QE kind of sharing session with your team. Could be just a 30-minute call where people experiment. People come along and they share what they have tried, experimented, what worked, what didn't work. So simple things like that can build confidence and can also surface good ideas and spread the adoption faster. Instead of, like Bill said, buy a lot of subscription, top down, use it, but start from bottom up.
Okay. So we've all said the same, really, haven't we? A lot of us have said the same about starting small. You said don't bore the ocean. That you need to make sure you get that buy-in from the early stage by doing having a small test case before rolling it out wholesale. Probably when Bill was referring to sort of leadership and stuff, then it's probably quite easy for them to say one day, right, we'll just get everyone a license to this new AI tool without thinking about how anyone's going to use it, which is probably the wrong way around. But the governance piece is really interesting because there must be so many implications for this across the technology team. Out of interest, do you think that teams need to have a dedicated specialist in this area to sort of own AI inclusion? Otherwise, look after the specific governance of how these tools operate. I guess someone needs to create some guidelines, but.
So, I mean, I think AI governance is something that companies are tackling now, not just for QE or QA, it's in general. Anywhere where they're using AI, they have to think about using this, particularly in regulated environments.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that, it's not just about public customer-facing pieces of work, it's all the internal work, because everything we do internally generally will have some kind of impact externally. If we use AI in QA, then we're kind of delegating some responsibility to the AI to check things out for us. And if that's going to eventually impact a customer, it has to be part of the governance framework that the company has. So I think if you're large enough and you've already got a governance framework in place, that governance for how we use AI in testing may be informed by the testing team and the testing specialist, but it will fall within the general sort of AI governance. The issue will be where companies who are not really into that sort of governance frameworks and don't have any kind of governance, maybe they don't even have acceptable use policies for anything. They just seat in the pants, just kind of getting on with coding and building and delivering stuff. We then have to think about, well, who's responsible for that? I mean, ultimately, everybody is responsible, but it's who's accountable within the organization for our use of AI and proper use of AI. We don't want to see instances where I'm using a public service like ChatGPT and I put in customer data into that and OpenAI starts using that for their data, which they have done in the past. I think Samsung did that a few years back or a year back. So I think there's a responsibility at an individual level to make some common sense ideas about how you handle data, but also at an organizational level, somebody has to be accountable for our use of that in the organization.
Yeah, because you can see the implications of all of a sudden everyone's starting to use these tools and products in a kind of unregulated, unspecified way. There'd be some, there could potentially be some quite serious issues from doing that.
And there are some indirect things that people don't necessarily think about. Everyone thinks about impact on customer, but there's also impact on the organization. There's a study done recently where it was shown that over-reliance on AI tends to decrease people's critical thinking faculties. It's a fairly good study. It's only one. There might be others in the future, but it just shows that kind of trend that, it's almost like overuse of AI makes you less smart. And so if an organization becomes too over-reliant on AI, when something goes wrong, no one knows how to fix it. Yeah, and I've seen this in code. When I've used things like Bolt and Cursor, it'll generate code. It doesn't work, and if it's an area or technology I don't understand, I can't get it to work. We can't get it to work without going back, taking steps back. But if you don't have those skills in team anymore, you're going to run into some problems. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, brilliant. There's some good stuff in there. Thank you for that. We'll move on to the third question. We've got loads of things that are coming from people watching, which is brilliant, and we're going to get to those as well. So I've started some of the questions coming in. Do keep those flowing as well, because we'll try and get to them. And it looks like we should have plenty of time at the end to cover those off as well. But what we wanted to move on to next was to talk about how we think AI is specifically changing the role of a quality engineer. Things are moving so fast in this regard; it's crazy, really. And what potentially will that mean for the futures of people doing this type of role now? Will it still exist in the same way? Will it exist at all? What's going to happen? Difficult one to answer. We're just looking really for kind of opinions and thoughts on this. Rahul, where are you at? Where's your head at?
So I feel that AI is eventually going to increase the market for skilled testers who can critically think, question the claims by AI tools, because most AI tools are essentially a wrapper over the base AI models. And that's why most of those AI tools suffer from syndromes that come from the base models. And it's important to question them, critically analyze them, evaluate them, and not be doomed by the marketing claims. And I think this is one area where testers, quality engineers can highly contribute in. Uh, there is also this checklist that I had put in the chat, which is bit.ly/evaluate tools, which is a list of things that people should be, or testers should be, looking whenever they are evaluating a testing tools. And the last page of that checklist talks about things that you should be checking about if you are exploring a AI tool. So AI is not a silver bullet. I mean, AI is just like a tool. It's a software. It suffers from its own problem. And one issue that AI often creates is that it, like Bill says, that it can create a lot of learning depth for people if people over rely on AI, because then they are not learning about the thing and they are just prompting AI to get the outputs. And if you take too much depth, then at one point you will be in a position where you cannot really manage that big system that you have created by taking all the depth. So it's important to know what you want to do with AI. And the bottom line is that everybody and anybody can just use AI as per their own skills in their own craft. So if you don't understand the craft, I mean, there is no magic pill of AI that can take your craft to the next level. I mean, your level of craftsmanship will determine how well you can use AI. So don't take too much learning depths, improve on your craft.
And do you think we'll see the actual role designation change from quality engineer to something different, Rahul? Do you think that, because
I'm already seeing there are roles for AI lead and dedicated developers who are creating or customizing models. So that is going to also increase. There is no doubt on that, because we need dedicated folks to help us implement AI, help us take the responsibility of responsibly applying AI. And I think that is also one area that will increase. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Bill, can I come to you on this one?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, the role of a tester or a quality engineer has been changing all the time. And I've been in this for 30 years, and I've seen lots of these kind of, is testing dead? Is it carrying on? So it's always evolving, and that's the important thing. As technology evolves, we evolve with it. And I just see the AI as part of that, and so we have to adapt to using it. So and there's a couple of aspects to this. One is using it as a tester to help with your testing. And I think that's where this idea of sort of AI fluency comes in, is being able to get the best out of these AI type tools, whichever brand you're using, or even if they're sort of bespoke ones, you still need that sort of skills to understand that. So I definitely look at AI fluency from Anthropic. They wrote a paper about it. It's really interesting. So I think that's going to be an important skill set for testers as they sort of develop through their careers. And new testers coming in say 5 years' time, that's probably going to be a mandatory thing, that they'll already have to know this stuff before they start. At the moment, we just have to adapt to it and learn. The challenge is it's changing so quickly that it's an effort to keep up with all of this. Where these kind of tools were a year ago or 2 years ago is vastly different from where they are now. They're still nowhere near perfect, still not all fully trustworthy, but they're going to be there and they're going to be used and supported. So I think there's that aspect to it. And I think if you're currently like an SDET or something like that, I think now is a good time to be getting involved with Gen AI, agentic AI, and learning how to do that and starting to build your own agents and frameworks in order to automate some of these tasks. Because as I said earlier, this idea of me as a tester sitting at a chat window chatting with an AI is probably going to last another year or so, and then it will be just used for more specialist and more unique tasks. Beyond that, everything else will be workflows and data prompt flows and things like that, and agents. So if you're an SDET, I'd definitely be sort of looking at that, because that's where the biggest bang for your buck is going to come with that, as well as using tools like Cursor, Claude Code, and things like that to improve your code that you're building for your automation and tools. The other aspect, which I think Naveen mentioned, is around how we test AI systems. I think that's a whole different sort of topic, and a huge topic, hugely complicated. But I think testers in general will have to adapt their skills to learn how to do that properly and effectively, because it's not the same as you're testing your e-commerce site or your banking web app or something like that. It's a very different beast and takes different techniques and different tooling to do that. So I think, there's a lot of change coming for testers. The reason why I say they'd have to learn how to do this is because, almost all products going forward are going to have some kind of AI in there in some way, some form. Maybe not all, but, a large proportion of it. So we're going to start seeing that, and we're going to be asked to test that more often. And it's going to become more critical to test that more often. At the moment, we're kind of not, a lot of companies are building stuff, putting it out there and hoping for the best, I think, and not really testing it. So I think there's this period of the next couple of years, if you're already in testing, it's going to be changing quite rapidly. And if you're not already starting to look at some of these topics, you're kind of going to get left behind, I think.
Thank you. I was going to probe just you talking about SDETs. We spoke before about the ability of AI to create code quickly. Doing that. Do you think SDETs will be, and people who really focus on automation will be more affected by this than quality engineers who maybe don't focus on that area?
So I think certainly SDETs will be expected to use more AI-based code generation tools to support the work they're doing. And that means that as individuals, they move away from being the sort of typing monkey who's just typing stuff into the computer to being more of an architect in terms of architecting how they want the framework to work, how they want a particular piece of automation to run, and letting the machine basically do the typing and thinking about how to implement that desire. So I think they become need to develop that sort of more architectural thinking rather than, I'm going to build a page object. Doesn't care. Get machine to build that. It can do it quicker than you can.
Yeah. If I can, Bill, before I go to Naveen, someone's asked a question here which leads on to this really nicely. So this is Mariam, who's watching, who I've spoken to. So it's nice to hear that Mariam's watching. For someone in the early stage of learning automation, what tools or techniques would you recommend to make the learning process efficient and future-proof? One concern I have is that by the time someone becomes fully skilled in a particular tool or language, it might already be outdated or replaced, especially with the rapid advancements in AI. So as it leads on, Bill, do you want to just give any...
I'll try and give a quick answer to that. But obviously, Miriam can reach out to me if she wants to afterwards. So I think one of the interesting things about AI, or certainly the code generation tools, and they are getting quite good now, is that it almost doesn't matter what framework we're using. If the framework changes, I can just get the AI to regenerate it in a different language or a different framework, and it will do it quite quickly. I don't need to learn that. Well, I do need to learn something about it, because if there's a problem, I need to be able to go in and debug that and understand what's going wrong. But I think if you're starting out, you need to understand the basics and how you build and architect good automation anyway. That's a sort of given. You have to do that whether you're using AI or not. But I think in terms of how you build AI, one really useful way is to use AI and learn what it creates, or learn about what it creates. So ask it to build something for you from an automation perspective. You learn a skill there in terms of how you interact with the AI to build your code, and it's going to generate your code. And if you're not experienced at building good, solid code, you can use that code that's generated to try and understand, why did it do this? Why did it do that? I see how it's done that. I see how it's used implicit weight versus an explicit weight. I understand how it's used this locator versus that locator. So it's a good learning experience. And certainly when I'm developing in technologies that I don't understand, sometimes I'll get the AI to generate it, and then I'll just pour over that line by line and really try and understand, what has it done and does it make sense what it's done? And do I understand it? Could I then recreate that if I was asked to do it at a later date without an AI system? I don't think it means you can automate without learning to code. I don't think the tools are at the position where 100% of the time they will produce bulletproof code. And so, the idea of someone who is not a programmer or a developer building automation just solely using AI is probably a few years off, I think.
Which is funny because someone's literally just asked that question, or very, very similar to that, which is Abayo, who said, can you use AI to learn an automation tool, I'm assuming, from scratch?
I mean, you can use it in two ways. One, you can just ask the AI to explain things to you.
Yeah.
Another one is to get it to generate code for you. And then, like I say, it's not just about, it's done that. It's about what you do with that content when it's produced. It's about digging into it and understanding and assimilating it in your own knowledge base of how this works, why this works. And even, one of the interesting things about these tools is even when you said, can you generate me code to do X, Y, or Z? You can ask it, why did you do that? And it will try and explain. And whether or not it's a true explanation or not is a research question. So we're just going to assume for the moment that actually it's giving what it thinks is an explanation of why it chose to build it in that way.
Yeah. Naveen, thanks for waiting patiently there. Appreciate that. We were getting into it there with some good questions that are coming in. But yeah, the final question, which Bill and Rahul have already had to go, is just where we think this is heading and what we think the implications of that are going to be for a quality engineer.
So I think a lot of it is already covered by Bill and Rahul, but just to kind of add on to those thoughts, it's pretty clear that the QA roles that we know today are not going to be the same in a few years, and every time you ask an AI tool a question or you're using an AI tool, you're kind of verifying, validating, and adjusting anyway. So what that means is every role is becoming an AI augmented role. When I say every role, not just QA, anyone who's interacting with AI is testing AI already. Everyone is a QA. Coming back to something that Rahul mentioned. So for QA, I think the future is more strategic or analytic. And I think the word Rahul used was critical thinking. So thinking critically. So it's about, I think from QA point of view, it's not going to be about just writing test cases and doing like mindless tasks, but it's about understanding how to leverage the right tool, how to interpret the model behavior, and how to think critically. And what I've seen in terms of the evolution of QA role, I've seen roles like AI test strategist or AI QA integrator or prompt QA specialist. And I think the roles like these that never existed like a few years ago are now in high demand and will be more in demand. And as Bill said, fluency with AI is currently optional. I don't think it will be in few years' time. So there will be like a baseline or must know thing.
Good. I think that's good. I think it's I think what a lot of people want to hear, that actually AI doesn't mean that jobs in quality engineer are disappearing. Far from it. Actually, there might be even more of a place for people with critical thinking skills to help to make sure that these tools and technologies are taking things in the right direction and not going unchecked. Which is the question that Rishi just asked. It's good to see Rishi watching. So he said, do you think that the market for strong test analysts is likely to increase further in the coming years? Rahul's already answered in the chat to say that you do. Correct?
I mean, I think that's a it depends kind of answer. I think, strong test analyst can mean a whole lot of things. I think where they're going to, a strong test analyst who understands AI systems and the technical risks around AI, I think will be in high demand. But I think someone who's a strong test analyst in, I don't know, e-commerce sites, probably less so, because I think a lot more of those sites themselves will get generated by AI, because that's a well understood problem. It's fairly easy to build those. So I think it's, yes, critical thinking skills is going to be very important. But I think if you marry that with a strong understanding of AI, we're not necessarily talking about how do I build an AI from scratch type of level. we're talking about how do we understand the technical risks, how they work, how to get the best out of them. I think they're going to be in demand.
Just to add to that, I think a very well-known AI expert in the AI arena is Andrew Yang, if you haven't heard of him. So he mentioned a few months back that at the moment, AI can replace or automate around 30% of the roles, for 30% of the responsibility of a role. And in coming years, we'll see it going to 50, 60% in general, basically. So as a test analyst, if most of your responsibilities lies under that 50% part, then yeah, that role is redundant. And like Bill said, it depends very much. It's contextual what your roles and responsibilities are. But if you're just doing the replaceable things that AI can very easily kind of take over, then the demand won't be high.
And I think, there's an interesting thing here around, from what you're saying, is that 30% now, what is that based on? I think with something like code, there's a lot of data out there, and there's a lot of need for building models that are specific for code. But actually, there's been very little demand so far for building any kind of model that's bespoke and customized for training, for testing. And part of testing related information out there in the public domain for them to sort of suck up and learn from. Code wise, you look at GitHub, Stack Exchange, all those kind of things, lots and lots of code to learn from. Very much smaller amount of data for testing. So I think that, if we're judging how well something is doing now based on for testing, when I look at some of the tests that get generated by ChatGPT or Gemini or something like that, when we talk about sort of business cases rather than code level tests, I think the quality is pretty ropey sometimes. It's very generic, very shallow. But then they're not really specialized tools that allow them to sort of take in context about testing, about the system that we're building, our standards, all these kind of things. It's not learned that. It hasn't got that context in order to produce a good output. And that's why I think, agentic is the way to go, because we can start sucking that information in rather than rely on a public website like, public service like ChatGPT.
Definitely. Just want to add quickly two things. So this is exactly where the product that we are building and launching in a month time comes into picture. Very much specialized, fine-tuned, and contextually aware to do certain QA related stuff like test generation, automation, and not just generation and taking it further. But Bill, Cursor just released, I think, a few weeks ago, a bug hunter agent within the thing. So I think that's a space to kind of look out for everyone if you use the Cursor.
Yeah, but it's still very much code-based, whereas the kind of things that testers are doing is often not. It's more about business requirements and fitness compared to, does the system do what our customers or users need? And that's more of a socio-technical kind of problem. And I think that's where they lack. I can ask any of these tools to give me some test cases for a log-on screen, and they're given that because there's lots of examples of that. But it won't necessarily be contextual to what I'm doing, and it won't necessarily deal with other more sort of abstract things that are related to how a user wants to use a system. So I think your stuff is what you're doing here is going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Drop the link, book a demo. I'll show you the magic.
Sure.
Yeah, Bill set it up for you nicely there, didn't that plug? That was perfect. It wasn't even it genuinely wasn't even rehearsed. I don't think it was anyway. Someone's put here, so we're getting some good practical stuff here, and obviously Naveen's mentioned something there. But someone has asked, what is the best testing AI tool to analyze test reports and provide summaries for management? Anyone got anything?
I think it depends on what you're trying to achieve out of it. I mean, any of the general sort of GPT type tools, the sort of Claude GPT, ChatGPT, all these kind of things, Gemini, they'll do a good job of summarizing data. I'm not sure I would trust it with facts and figures, but they do a reasonable job of it. If you want to do sort of analysis of it in terms of statistical analysis, I think tools like Claude can do statistical analysis of your code. I mean, under the covers, it's using agents that are designed to do statistical analysis. But whether or not a typical testing project has the kind of level of data that would give good statistical information is another question, because it's normally just how many tests have passed, how many have failed. If you're doing that kind of statistics, how many bugs have we got, how many of them are major? If you just want to summarize that, well, I probably wouldn't use an AI for that. I'd probably just use a dashboard and collect it and automate that.
Yeah, I have also been exploring a similar tool, or I wanted to have a similar tool for this kind of a use case. And I eventually ended up exploring and using Allure 3, which is the latest version on top of Allure 2, which was popular. And Allure 3 is not like a pro AI tool, but like it solves my problem. It gives me summary analysis, which actually helps my management take some decision. So I mean, sometimes when probably you're looking for an AI tool, there is already a non-AI tool available out there. So I mean, like as engineers, I think we have to also focus on like becoming problem solvers rather than just using AI tool because we want to solve a problem. So there are like existing tools that can solve problems. Also explore them.
I mean, just to follow on from what Rahul was saying there, I think there's, we've been very much focused on the big, large language models here, talking about GPT, Gemini, all these kind of things, or at least I have. But there's a growing trend towards what's known as small language models and marketplaces for small language models that are very niche and specific in what they do, and they solve the problem rather than worrying about having something that's, 150 billion parameters. You get something that's maybe 7 billion parameters, which is something you could host locally on your own, or not necessarily on your own machine, but on a machine for the company. So you avoid things like data sharing with OpenAI and Anthropic and things like that. So I think there's a big growth in small language models that are tailored to specific tasks. And I think you will see some more happening in that as people get involved with it, which is one of the reasons why I think SDETs need to get stuck into this.
So what, just very quickly, the take on this side is, while there might be a lot of LLMs, small, tiny, big, and all sort of available, one skill that is kind of very less talked about and being, kind of put aside with the evolution of LLM models is prompt engineering. I think a lot of people are speculating that you won't need to be an expert in prompt writing and things like that, but then a new model and fine-tune the enhanced version comes along and you still need prompt engineering. So I think if there's one thing that you can start with is prompt engineering, get really good at it. So regardless what foundational model you use to generate a report for management, you still need to guide it, either small or big. So prompt engineering, I think Rahul has a course on it as well. So
yeah,
where's the place to go to look for how to become good at prompt engineering?
I would say the one place I've been exploring is Claude Workbench. So if you go to Claude and search for Workbench, you can write a basic prompt. It will enhance with AI. Then it has you can test that with the output. Then you can rank those outputs for the quality, and then you can keep evaluating and improving. So that way you kind of learning two things: how to write better prompt and what a good prompt looks like, and also how to evaluate a prompt. So I think it's a two birds in a stone kind of situation from a QA point of view. Not only I'm learning about prompt engineering, I'm also learning about how to test a system prompt, so that you can create the thing that I talked about, golden data set. So whenever you're testing an AI product, you need to create those input output kind of golden data set. And that's a really good starting point. So yeah, thanks Rahul for sharing that link.
And Rahul, do you want to talk about your Ministry of Testing course?
Yeah, so I have created one foundational course on prompting for testers, because as Naveen said, I think prompting is like as fundamental as communication, because prompting is about communication with the models. So if you can communicate well with the models, you can really get them to do good things. So it's a fundamental art, fundamental skill. And in my primary course, which is foundational course with Ministry of Testing, we have covered how do you craft a good prompt, how do you refine a prompt, how do different components in a prompt help you to get meaningful outputs, and then how can you even create your own prompting hub. For example, I use my own prompting hub, which is a ready to use prompts for certain kind of repeated tasks that I do. So how do you systematically arrange and move? So that course is about that. But the good news is this year we are building an advanced course on prompting. So soon, like we have a version 2.
Okay. Sounds
Yeah.
exciting.
And I'd say if you're more interested in reading rather than watching and things like that, I think Google has a course that they did in collaboration with Kaggle, which is very good and very strong on prompt engineering. Anthropic and OpenAI both have really good prompting guides. They're quite quite weighty to read, but they're very good. They cover all the essential things.
Okay, thank you. You've been kind, Rahul and Naveen and Bill. Shared some really good links in the comments. I'll try and amalgamate them all at the end of the session and make sure everyone who's watched gets a chance to have a look at all those links together as well.
Last one, Mike. So if you are interested in seeing what system prompt look like for all of these amazing tools they've been using, Bolt, Cursor, and stuff, there's a Git repository with leaked system prompt. So that should also give us a very good understanding of what a good prompt look like.
Okay. There's a question here which we'll get to. So this is from Shrini. So thank you for watching, Shrini. There's a claim that the problem of unit testing is done and dusted thanks to AI. How true is that? Can AI understand your code and generate good unit tests? Rahul, do you want to tackle that one?
See, so like even without AI, I mean, there are existing tools like Visual Studio Professional Enterprise, which used to generate unit tests from the code. The challenge with the unit tests generation automatically is that it generates it based on a pattern. So probably it can create certain unit tests based on the patterns that it sees in the code, but it doesn't know your data limits, which means what kind of data you want to test it for. It doesn't understand your interfaces well. It doesn't understand the real functionality or the business use case. So I mean, you are then back to square one. So you have certain tests which will pass, and but are they really critical? Or you just have a wall of tests which is very weak, and then your actual testing team has to write scripts to catch the real issues. So AI can certainly help if you have an idea, but if you rely for the idea on AI, then AI will give you average enough idea, because AI is mostly trained on the average enough data.
Okay. I'm just going to flash. Thank you. Just going to flash this up from someone else. So we were talking a little bit about governance earlier. I think the word ethics was mentioned. This is Ujwal. I think I'm hopefully pronouncing that okay. AI ethics is one of the fields which is growing and will grow in the future. Maybe companies need to work on AI ethics as per their organization. I think it's definitely true, isn't it? It's going to become a bigger and bigger thing as it's rolled out across large organizations, and as Bill said, regulated environments. Lots of implications there for things like that. There's a question here specifically from Christopher Forsyth. So question for Bill: which automation tool do you use with AI generated code? So that was probably to an earlier comment.
Yeah. I mean, generally, if I'm building anything code-wise, I use either Claude Code or Cursor. They're the main ones that I use. I've used a few others, but I find they are the ones that are most reliable and robust. But in terms of what I'm building, it's just your normal framework codes around things like Playwright or Selenium, WebDrive or whatever, Cypress as well. Not a particular fan of Cypress, but that's generally what I use. Just those. I'm not a big fan of wrappers around existing frameworks that are sold by vendors to say we're automating this. I'd rather just have more control over it myself and play with the code. So that's generally what I use. But I've been a programmer since I was 11, and you can tell by my beard that was a long time ago. So I'm more used to being in the code. Other people won't be, and so they may want to use different tools.
Okay, right. We are now at the end of the session. We've done an hour, 60 minutes. Thanks so much to the panel for contributing today. We've covered so much, and there's been loads of comments coming through. Really appreciate everyone watching. Lots of people asking for links to some of the things we've been talking about. So the four of us will get together after this just to go over some of those things. And also the video will be available on YouTube for everyone to watch from tomorrow. So yeah, thanks again to the panel. If you can just stay on for a second, we'll chat after the stream ends, which will be now. So again, thank you to everyone who's watched along today. Hope you've really enjoyed it. We'll be doing another QBabble in a couple of weeks' time. So I'll see you then. Thank you.
Bye.